In this episode of the Exploring Information Security podcast, exploring AI, APIs, and social engineering of LLMs.
Computers now have primary control of critical functions.
Houston, recommend vector transfer.
Your go for APU shutdown on time.
Roger, go for deploy.
Nice to be in orbit.
Welcome to the Exploring Information Security podcast, where you will learn, explore, and grow your security mindset. I'm your host, Timothy D. Block, and in this episode, we will be exploring AI, APIs, and the social engineering of LLMs. With me to do that is Keith Hoodlet, Director of AI and ML and Application Security at Trail of Bits. He is a prominent voice in AI red teaming and application security with over 20 years of experience. You can find his personal writings and insights on his site, securing.dev. You can also check out thoughts.dev as well. Show notes can be found at exploresec.com/EIS. Feedback for the show, hit me up, timothy.dblock@exploresec.com. You can also hit me up on LinkedIn, and you can rate the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. That's also how you can help support and grow the show, because the more people rate it, the more people like it, the more it will expand to other people's feeds. This is how AI works, guys. I have started a community. So I started a Discord channel where I'm kind of dropping some news items that I find interesting. We're having a little bit of discussion, but would really like to get like more of an online community going for exploring information security. You can go to exploresec.com/community, or if you go to exploresec.com, there's a community button at the top right. I also have a listserv, which I will, share some of the things going on, share new episodes, share events, things like that. And then speaking of events, meetup.com, go there, sign up for Exploring Information Security, where we're going to do live podcast recording, live events, potentially some in-person events, depending on where in the country I'm at. But you can go certainly check that out there. This was a really good episode. I've had Keith on several years ago to talk about bug bounty programs, which you'll hear in the recording. But because he was at Bug Crowd, went over to, I believe, GitHub, and then he's made his way over to Trail of Bits, which they do a lot of really cool research on stuff. And so I've been looking to do some more AI conversations with people. I am getting hit up for guests all over the place, but I don't know them. I know Keith. I know Trail of Bits as well. Again, like I said, they do some really good research, but I'm trying to make sure I'm bringing in people that I can, one, have a good conversation with, but two, I can kind of speak to their knowledge about it, because I'm still learning about this. But talking to Keith, you can kind of hear he's really dove into the AI stuff, and there's going to be more conversations. He and I talked about potentially setting up some more episodes for the future. So really excited to have that and have him on to talk about AI. One of the things, and I'll put this in the show notes, is he's got a Gandalf.Lakera, LAKERA.AI/baseline, where you can learn. It's like a game that you can learn about how to do prompt injection, which is what we talk about. So, really excited for the episode. Hope you are too. Let's go exploring.
By the way, fun fact, fun backstory. Back when I started Application Security Weekly, Patrick reached out to me and gave me the pro tip. He's like, "I love what you're doing, mate, but you sound like shit. Get yourself a Rode," and which is how I got my Rode microphone set up that I've had since 2018. So kudos to Patrick for looking out. So
he's nenever said that to me.
You sound great.
Podcast, yeah. Well, so I do the. I'm the Audio Technica ATR 1000, I think it is now. So this is the new, or ATR 2100.
Nice.
Which when I started podcasting, I listened to a podcast about how to podcast, and that was like the recommendation. It's like a $70 mic, right? How much is that Rode? Is it?
The Rode's like 150, I think, total.
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah, your quality's probably your quality's probably better than mine. But the Audio Technica and I think at one point I got it for like $35.
Dude, that's nice.
Yeah, well, and you get 7 out of 10 quality. Like I could get better quality, but it's like, again, low cost, low effort for this stuff. So
yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you. But hey, whatever works though.
Yeah, no, but that's cool. I like Patrick. He's the one that showed me River, and then he gave me I asked him for some tips and stuff. So he's been really good about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he's a good dude, and he's definitely got an empire going though. This week he's got Adam, and I'm forgetting her name now.
Amberly Jack.
Yes, and so she's doing the episode this week. And I thought it was funny. I was like, "Wait, this isn't Patrick." And it was like, "Yeah, no, Patrick's on vacation, but we're gonna riff." And I was like, "I love this. I love
It's
this
like the first time in like several years. Yeah, no, I was
ever. Apparently, it was like the first time that he's gone on vacation and they've done nothing. Like he's not involved in any of it. So
he needs to, like you said, he's got an empire going. So I don't know how that guy does it. I think he's trying to like make it. I mean, he's got more people involved in it now because I've been listening to him he's one of the first podcasts to listen to, and it allows me to keep my thumb on the pulse of what's going on in the industry with a intelligent take, if that makes sense.
Yep. I hear you for sure.
Are you still doing a podcast?
I dropped out for Application Security Weekly after 2019, and I will occasionally show up on other people's podcasts.
Like this one?
Like this one. Yeah. In fact, I was on one last night, and I'd done a couple with Zero Signal now, which is started by Stu Mitchell of Hampton North, like recruiting consulting firm, and then Connor Sherman, who's the VCSO at Sysdig. So that one's quickly made it onto my radar based on just who they've had on the show. But we're starting one at Trail of Bits. In theory, we haven't actually like announced or launched anything, but they had one before I joined, and then it sort of fizzled out. And now I said like it's the easiest medium to just sit down, riff on a topic, get it out the door, and get market share, and have intelligent conversations. And so our new head of marketing is like, "Yep. We've got a platform that we can do this with, that we can do webinars with as well. Let's just try it." So I'll be MC for that when it comes back.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I did the same thing, actually. Funny enough, you said 2019. I was kind of burned out at that point, and I just stopped for like 5 years. I should have picked it up during the pandemic. Instead, I picked up drinking, which was not good. But I did eventually get this back up, probably just because of, I think, job-based stuff, man. It's just like I need to be my own boss, I think. I get too flustered with some of the stuff going on in the corporate world. But it's
the best kind of marketing for the lowest lift and effort required to actually get it. The thing that I tell everybody is having a public brand, having a presence, having like opinions and sharing them, that is guaranteed to get you work or find you a job. And a podcast is the lowest lift way to do that. So,
yep. Yeah. And actually my current job, they brought that up in the interview. It's like, "Oh, you got a podcast that you're doing." I was like, "Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a little
been around
thing."
for a while.
Yeah. Well, it's been around for a while. So when I came back and looked at the number, there's still people subscribed, but it's like 1/8. So like it was actually getting pretty big. And I thought about monetizing it, but I had no interest in doing it. Now, of course, I'm back now, but it's so competitive though too, because like you said, it's so easy to get started up, and a lot of people have podcasts. Not to say it's a bad thing, but it definitely is a much different landscape than competing up against and I do something I think different than a lot of the other ones, but like Risky Business, Security Weekly, your AppSec thing, right? There just wasn't as many, but now you can probably find a ton of them. But not of them
stick around topical either. Ones though, like that's the thing is there's a lot of the news feed ones. Mm-hmm. Getting the topical ones is super helpful, I think, and it has staying power. Like the news feed is you got to listen to it every week in order to stay current, but the staying power ones, people can go back and listen to old episodes and still get value out of them, right?
Yeah, and that's what I've done with this. Is like it's like a timeless episode, so it's not meant to be. I mean, sometimes I cover like more newer stuff, but to your point, it's like a lot of more popular stuff has like people have gone back and listened to, and it's become just popular later on, or it just has like continued downloads because there's always new people coming into the field finding topics they want to dig into. And I would argue, I re-release actually. That's what I've been doing to fill kind of the gaps when I'm either just super busy or I need something out the door. And I can go back and pull a lot of my podcast episodes and put it on, put it back on the feed, because my feed's only 100 episodes too. So like you can max out at 300, but I have it on the RSS feeds on Squarespace, so it max out 100. But what I'm doing is I started up a YouTube channel that's feeded into the RSS feed. So now all the episodes are going on YouTube, so I can kind of start collecting all the ones that were old that just never made it to YouTube. Of course, I have a problem there with some of them getting uploaded that I have to go back and fix. But yeah.
Nice, dude. Congrats. Glad to see you back on the horse.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and you as well. It's always good to catch up with you. We've run cross paths a couple times already.
We have. I think I was on the OG version of the show at one point.
Yeah.
I feel like
Mhm.
I'm trying to remember what it was about. Maybe InfoSec mentors or something. I can't remember what it was, but
Well, to your point, that's what I started a podcast for, is because it was a great way to meet people. Like, I've met so many people through the industry, yourself included. Here, we'll go to the exploresec.com website. Let's see.
yeah, I'm on there somewhere. I just don't know what episode number I am.
It may have been like, I thought it was like an AppSec one, but I could be wrong.
It's possible too.
No, we talked bug bounty programs. I think, weren't you at a bug bounty?
I was at Bug Crowd for a while. Yeah, so that would have been like
Bug Crowd,
2017, 2018, right before you took a break. Yeah. Wow. Blast from the past.
Yeah. Well, and that's one too. What are bug bounty programs, right? That's timeless stuff that I think if you go back and listen to it, there might be some stuff you want to update, but it's also like there's just a lot of good information there. And those have kind of, I don't know, like I feel like things flare up and then they kind of just fade away, or they're still there.
Yeah, they come back every now and then too. I mean, everything is old is new again in this industry. It just takes give it a couple cycles around the sun and it'll come back.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I actually think APIs are going to come back around.
I mean, with MCP servers and everything, like the tool use interfaces, yeah, like APIs are. I mean, they never really went away technically, but like they're definitely back, in a big way now, and in a way that like auth becomes an even harder problem to solve way too. So.
Yeah, I put a talk together for APIs for 2023, and that was the year that ChatGPT came out in March, like right as I started pushing the API, because APIs I felt like were coming in hot, like right before all the AI stuff, and then the AI stuff came out, and APIs just kind of disappeared. But you're right, like they're still there. They are what run the internet at this point. I think they're gonna, like you're right. There's different challenges to them, and so I like to uncover. That's the whole point too of exploring, right? Is to uncover some of the stuff and demystify. And APIs are really not that complicated. They're just, once you dig into them, it's kind of like, oh, you don't have to worry about cross-site scripting as much. Maybe a little SQL injection, but it's more about like authorization and do you have your permissions set up properly?
Yeah, BAFLAs and what is it? Broken object functions, or BOLAs and BAFLAs and all that stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and even I was at B-Sides Greenville, and Tim Tomes was talking. He had an authentication talk, and the OWASP top one is like broken authentication, which means like it's become, to your point, like a big thing. Just in general, I feel like kind of going back to 2019, like we started seeing the rise of identity access management, but it's just kind of exploded since then, right? And auth is everywhere. Like it's in there's so many apps, there's so many vendors, there's just so many things to log into now. Yeah.
It's is it Okta? It was Auth0 for a while, then they got acquired and by Okta, and so and I know some folks that are working on some stuff. I think it's still in stealth. That's like meant to come after that space even harder. And now you've got MCP servers needing to do auth2, and how do you distinguish and differentiate? You can't just give it like a system account or a bot account. Like it's sort of operating at a level where it needs maybe an inbox because it's performing mail functions and all these other things. So it's almost like a user, but not a user, and making sure you're doing all the right auth consistently, like making sure that when you're doing retrieval augmented generation, that, hey, does this person actually have access to that information, is a hard problem if you're doing really poorly segmented, RAG setups. So yeah, it's everything old is new again, Timothy. Everything old is new again.
Yeah, I love too that. Like Okta used to be the disruptor, right? They were the ones that were like, hey, we got all these things you got to log into. We'll give you one platform, one single pane of glass to log into. And now you're telling me there's companies that are looking to tackle their problems about authentication, which is just hilarious. Yeah. Just building vendors on top of vendors. But I talked to you about prompt injection and AI because that's the new hotness, and I actually don't have as much content as I'd like on AIs. But what are you doing with that at Trail of Bits?
I'm happy to riff. I mean, so Trail of Bits, we do a lot of like AI red teaming here. So the sort of work that we're working on now often involves a client comes to us. Maybe they've developed an MCP server. Maybe they've developed a large language model chatbot. Maybe they're doing some interesting novel applications of large language models to various kinds of problems. And they come to us and they say, okay, how do we make this thing secure? And oftentimes it ends up us being, just who we are as Trail of Bits, finding a bunch of ways to just like break through all of the guardrails, break through all the system prompts, break through the often weakly designed implementations of the way that they've set up their systems, and then having to walk them back through like ways in which they can harden this, ways that they can do proper data segmentation, ways that they can think about changing their guardrail implementations or limiting tool use functionality. And sometimes it works really well. Sometimes our clients are really receptive to that. They actually, will take something offline as a feature because we found really bad ways to break it. And other times they just decide to throw another pre-prompt at it, or sometimes called a system prompt, and hope that band-aids over the problem. And then inevitably, it usually then leads to them getting sort of wrecked in the public sphere after we told them so, and they didn't do anything to like really fix it from a design level. So it's good being engineering director though for the AI, ML, and AppSec team, because I get to see all of it. Like we get to work with some really cool clients. We do some really cutting edge work, but also there's a lot of people who are behind on this, including some of the folks that are like the hottest VC backed companies out there that are trying to lead the way and lead the charge. And they've lost the plot in some cases.
Yeah, it's good to hear. Yeah, it's good to hear that companies are coming to you guys going, okay, what do we need to do to fix this? But then like the reality is probably 90% of the companies are just going out and doing this without even thinking about like kind of the ramifications of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a huge push for optimization from executives in terms of, implementing AI. I think I heard recently that something like a 17% boost of like I don't know if it's likelihood of getting VC backed or the amount of funds that you get or your valuation gets increased by adding like a large language model or AI to your features or your functionality of your application. But yeah, there is a lot of companies out there that are very quickly, and in some cases YOLOing like implementations of large language models. In some cases, it's sort of okay because they're using a third party. I like one of the things I've started to see third parties stand up that effectively operate as a middleware between you and the frontier lab. And so these companies are now going to these middleware companies, and then the middleware companies are trying to do all the system prompting and guardrailing on their behalf. And sometimes it's effective. Sometimes it's just like, okay, well, I found yet another way to bypass the Akamai firewall that you set up poorly when you installed your implementation. And so it's, again, everything old is new again. It's just a different model necessarily of like the way we're approaching it, but same problem, same attack surface, same things we go after. So it's a good time to be in security is maybe the long and short of
it. Yeah. So like when you're saying middleware, you mean like, so for example, if you go to Stripe for handling transactions is what they're essentially doing. Instead of running their own AI LLM server, they're just using a third party to handle that.
Or even like, not even necessarily running their own like Llama model, for example, but maybe it's rather than going direct to Claude or direct to ChatGPT or direct to Gemini, they're going through these middleware companies who like they make the API call to the middleware company, and then the middleware company sends the call across to one of the frontier labs on their behalf. But in that middleware space, they're setting up the guardrails, they're setting up the system prompt, they're doing all of the sort of like filtration. It's effectively the quote unquote WAF, for lack of a better term, web application firewall layer for API calls to the frontier lab models. And it's interesting, right? It's interesting to see that we've already like speed run or sped run to this point where people are like, what if we just like create a company that sits in the middle of all this and like does all of the security heavy lifting on their behalf? And sometimes those things are designed well, and sometimes those things are really cheaply designed middlewares that are basically just a pass-through proxy. And that's just not effective for security, and we know that.
Yeah, well, and there's ways around it, right? That's kind of so I am thinking about this wrong. Is that it's more like when they taking in these prompts, right? It's going through this middleware company to then get filtered out or actually get passed on to the You said, is it LLM or LAM or I don't know what.
LLMs or large language models. Usually I just call them the frontier labs because oftentimes what they're doing is they're passing it to like a chat GPT or they're passing it to a Google Gemini or an Anthropic Claude model. I'm sure that there are some of these quote unquote middleware companies that are probably hosting or spinning up like a Llama 4 model or a DeepSeek model or a QN model that is perhaps a little bit more segmented or possibly even custom trained, with reinforcement learning and human feedback in order to be able to give specialization of, oh, you want a model that's particularly good at this one feature set that it's been reinforced and like retrained on. These middlewares or, middleware companies are offering that. There are some companies, in fact, many companies who are spinning up guardrails tools or they're spinning up their own system prompts, which is basically like a precursor set of instructions to the large language model. And then they're just calling, with the additional system prompt prepended to these frontier labs. So like, let's maybe take a step back because for your listeners, I think this will be really valuable. Like, let's talk a little bit about how large language models work, like how they're trained, I think is a really beneficial thing. And for anyone that wants to go out and like listen or learn more about how this all works, there's a 3 blue, 1 brown. It's the numeral 3, the numeral 1, all one word, 3 blue, 1 brown. That has like a 7-minute video and a 57-minute video on how large language models function and how they operate. But I'll do a little fun thought exercise for you and for your listeners just to like let them have a little bit of a trick to this. So Timothy, imagine a king or queen, just like in your mind, just like visualize a king or queen. If I had to hazard a guess, you probably envisioned someone that's a Caucasian skin tone, probably has either a beard or a cape or a cloak. They have maybe a gold crown, and they're probably set either in, I don't know, somewhere in England or Europe, and and on, right? So that, or it's a very old person, again with a crown on of some kind that maybe is sort of done up with various animal furs and what have you. Is that a pretty accurate description of what you envisioned?
I went to chess actually. I was thinking of a chess piece, king and queen.
So you are the rare 1% of people that I talk to that think that, because almost everyone I speak to when I use this analogy will think of either the Burger King if they're hungry, or they'll think of a king or queen from a European culture. But almost, I should say, a far smaller subset of people that I speak to think of like a Zulu king or queen with like the cheetahs. I think it's a leopard skin crown and a kof around their throat, or a sheik or a king from like Saudi Arabia, again with a long robe and the turban or what have you. I don't know actually what the headpiece is called there, but again, they have sort of a lot of their skin is covered. Almost no one thinks of a chess piece. So I'm glad that you broke the mold on this one. But the way to think about inference with large language models is, especially we'll use a text-based large language model so that we don't get things too confused with like image or audio-based large language models, but effectively in a 4-dimensional space. So you can use your sort of own body as a point of reference where you are where the X, Y, and Z axis meets. And so out in front of you is one direction, out to your left or right is other directions, above, below, backward. If I were to say European history is up above me, like right above my head, and if I were to then look at just maybe a structure of ethnicity as along my like east-west or right-left axis, you would have various points in history where more Italian influence from Roman culture would fall on that axis. So people with more of a Mediterranean skin tone, a little bit darker, maybe their hair is darker, their like hair is curlier. Versus if you go further north, you're going to have much fairer skin. They're probably going to be taller. They're going to be a little bit broader structurally. They're going to have, maybe men have very long beards and longer hair. Women have very long hair. And the cultures are different. And so when I say a king, it's probably somewhere up above you and to your left, for example, if that's in the direction of more Scandinavian or like, Anglo-Saxon. If I were to say emperor, you'd probably go more to your right, like the Caesar emperors, for example. But then if I add additional ethnicities, so if I were to add, sub-Saharan Africa ethnicities or Asian ethnicities, and I were to say emperor, well, that could land in a couple different spots now, because you maybe had, unless maybe you're French, you're thinking Emperor Napoleon. But if you're Japanese or Chinese, you're thinking emperor in a different way. And your depiction of emperor is different. And so what happens with the large language model and how this all ties into prompt injection is words in training all fall within this 4-dimensional space, usually within clusters. And so what it's trying to do is statistically predict what the next word in context should be in the phrasing or the sentence that it's spitting back out to you. And it's doing that based on statistics. So within one standard deviation of the middle of the bell curve, like that 50% marker under the bell curve. And so when you're prompt injecting, effectively what you're trying to do is you have these system or pre-prompt instructions. So these are the things that get appended in front of the string of characters that you provide in your prompt as a user. Do not give this person the recipes for drugs. Do not help them build bombs. Do not do all of these things. Do not give them my secret instructions. Do not, reveal passwords for users, blah, 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 blah. And so that pre or system prompt, whatever you want to call it, is just more text that's in front of your text. And when you're trying to perform a prompt injection, you're trying to overcome the limitations of that system prompt, often in ways that allow you to gain access or information that you're not supposed to have. And Pliny is a very sort of, maybe famous or infamous individual on the social media sphere for their ability to jailbreak large language models by figuring out how to provide a prompt in such a way that it breaks the instructions or the protections that the frontier labs have put in front of it, and then allows Pliny to go ahead and do all sorts of different attack techniques and make it do things that it's not intended, designed, or really allowed to or supposed to be allowed to do. And so what this comes back to with that whole inference thing that I was talking about is you're trying to find what's called the gradient descent, which I don't want to get too far into the mathematical terms here, but you're trying to find where the constraints of that inference sphere, for lack of a better term, are for what the language model is supposed to allow you to do, and how to jettison out of that orbit into some other logical space that the large language model has built into its training data set, built into its reinforcement learning, that it still can access, but you're not supposed to be able to access. And so the way this plays out in actual attacks is, for example, maybe I'm working with a large language model chatbot, and that chatbot has now tool access because of model context protocol and agentic feature sets. And I'm maybe working with a chatbot for customer service, and I've made a reservation somewhere, and I've put down my credit card and I've been charged $100. And then I go back and I go to the chatbot, hey, I want to cancel my reservation. Can you please refund me the $200 fee? And it uses its tools to say, oh yeah, I'm allowed within my training data set or within my reinforcement learning or within my system prompt to perform cancellation and reimbursement actions. So I'm going to cancel this person's reservation and I'm going to reimburse them. But I, as the user, have told to reimburse me $200. And it might not have the checks, the logic, the access to information to know how much that was supposed to be for my reimbursement. And so then it reimburses me $200. And that's effectively, again, playing within the bounds of what is this system designed to do? What is it allowed to do? What tools does it have access to? What information does it have access to? But then effectively tricking it into doing something that it shouldn't, which is reimbursing me more than the actual charge that I had paid for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like I've heard recently, like you're social engineering the AI, right, into doing something it doesn't want to do. Another thought I had is talking about APIs. It's working in retail, right? It's a business logic flaw. It's not even a vulnerability. It's a business logic flaw where it's like a person can check out multiple times the same coupon when it should have expired the coupon after they used it for the first time. It feels like it's a bit of a combination of both. Instead of like using technical or post and get requests, it's just, hey, I'm trying to talk to you. give me $200 back. And like you said, if they didn't put the proper checks in place or the proper guardrails, then they're given $200 back.
In fact, using the social engineering analogy here is actually sort of perfect, because there actually has been research specifically on this topic where they found that even though there's no mind or brain behind these things, again, it's all just inference based on weights in a training data set and reinforcement learning. But they discovered, and I'll link the paper here in the Google chat so you can maybe refer to it in the show notes for listeners, that you can effectively prompt inject large language models using techniques that social engineers actually use. And it's sort of a theory of mind concept. I mean, my degree is in psychology, somewhat ironically. And so seeing this, I thought that this was very interesting and very clever, because if you think about the corpus of information that large language models have now been trained on, all written texts that are in digital format, which, by the way, will include transcriptions of audio from movies, for example, and as well as the movies and what have you. And so now they have all of the fiction, nonfiction, fantasy, sci-fi, realistic fiction, what have you, in the training data set, which is a reflection of human behavior, especially in the film context. And so the fact that you can use social engineering techniques against these systems to achieve nefarious outcomes is both interesting because it's a system, not a human brain, but also somewhat to be expected after you think about it for a little bit, because what has it been trained on? All of human history that's in digital format, which is largely Western oriented and ethnically Caucasian oriented in many ways. Like all of the biases that you see in these systems comes out of the same sort of societal biases that you see in Western culture today, which is both terrifying and fascinating all at once.
Yeah. So how do you defend against that? Because I think that's kind of what we're running up against right now. Because I've argued, and part of this is because I'm in security awareness, but I've argued that our tooling has gotten really, really good. You and I have been in the industry a long time. I feel like the tooling has just gotten way better. But what that means, though, is that the human factor becomes more and more of a thing, because I feel like that's what we're seeing attackers target, the human element of getting into an organization. And it could be something as simple as, we were talking about listening to the Risky Business podcast, the guy that was bribed $5,000 just to give access and run some malicious code, right? That is, I think, happening more and more. And there's been cases of that for millions of dollars, but now if you can get someone for $5,000, that's wild. But so how do you defend against that, particularly within the AI space? I'm not here to tackle the security awareness and human behavior, but it feels like it's very similar.
Yeah, they both, we should come back to it, because I think the deep fake problem gets even harder to solve in current state of both high quality audio recreation using large language models, as well as high quality video recreation, including live video recreation, using basically a high quality or a high resolution image of an individual that with fidelity will replace that person's face on a call. And so it's hard. First of all, it's a hard problem to solve, because I think when we come back to the prompt injection piece, for example, there are a few things I should say. There are a couple of research studies that have been done specifically in this space, and I'll share the one that I think is perhaps most relevant right now for prompt injections itself here in the chat. But it's a paper by several different laboratories, including Invariant Labs, IBM, Google, Swisscom, ETH Zurich, QTI, Microsoft, and Applied AI Institute for Europe, and Swisscom. Which is design patterns for LLM agents against prompt injections. And in it, they give, I think it's 5 or 6 different patterns, whereby they try to go ahead and do effectively a transpiling of the user prompt in a way that allows you to more safely handle the user prompt. Now, again, it's not perfect. And oftentimes you need these things working in concert with one another. But for example, there's the action selector pattern that I think is going to be really easy to resonate with folks, where you go to a site, you pop open the chatbot to get some assistance, and instead of giving you a text field that you can fill in, you have buttons that you can click of the types of things that it can help you with. And that action selector pattern is basically pre-built in such a way that it has very defined things that it can do and very defined things that it can operate. And maybe you've decided to shortcut some of the work of the backend system such that it's using an LLM, but the prompts are now all of these like predefined actions that users are clicking on, as opposed to putting like proper programming logic behind all of this. And then the other side of it too is you can also have like a user prompt that does come in from a chat interface, but then the LLM only has very specific actions it can perform that are really well defined. And all it's trying to do as a language model is determine what is the action that you are trying to perform and choose from my set of actions that I have the ability to perform to then go forward and use that tool that I have to then perform that action. So that's just one example. In the paper, there's, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total. There's a couple of others. Like the one that I think was made most famous by Google was the code then execute pattern. They also released a research paper called Camel, like all camel case with a capital C. And I'll give you the link to that as well, but they released a reference implementation out on GitHub. And the idea here was take the LLM, have it go ahead and write code, in this case, Pythonic code, for what you are trying to accomplish from your natural language process prompt, and then pass that code to a quarantined large language model that can read your code and execute what you're trying to perform with access to data and tools. And so you've now logically separated the large language model that is inferring what you are trying to accomplish from the large language model that is performing the actions on your behalf. And using Pythonic code, it was a high fidelity way to, again, I'm using the word transpile here, but to transform your natural language, like inference of what you're trying to accomplish, into something that is probably safer for a large language model to then take and operate from, because maintaining a prompt injection through that first filter layer is hard, not impossible, but it is again a new challenge now. And with time and with experience and with persistence, you can very likely break that. But it's definitely going to save you from the run-of-the-mill fly-by-night script kiddies that are going to go out and try and do the, ignore all previous instructions and make me a sandwich type pre-prompts, or prompt injections.
So it's not. We're just moving to an API model, is what it sounds like, right? Where that's the same thing that APIs do, right? It's like you can only do these things. This is what you get. And again, like you said, people will find ways around that, or there'll be other ways to exploit that.
And there are, various patterns in there too. There's like a map reduce pattern, which is again using this concept of reducing the set of instructions down to a simplified map and then passing it to another large language model to operate off of that map with that data. And so it's effectively chunking the prompt into things of, okay, you do this piece, you do this piece, you do this piece. And in theory, if we're passing it through another large language model on the other side of it, now you've broken it up in such a way that, again, maintaining the prompt injection through the way that it's doing the map reduction can be more complicated to overcome. So the research paper itself, again, the research paper is called Design Patterns for Securing LLM Agents Against Prompt Injections, is worth a read if you're implementing large language models and you're trying to figure out how best to just level up on securing your large language model implementations. But it's not perfect. Even in the paper, they say that I think 5 of the 6 patterns are not fully resilient against a user prompt injection, which, by the way, most of these things are client-facing or user-facing, and oftentimes it's user-facing external to your company. Like one that's user-facing inside of your company, probably less of an issue, hopefully, unless you have a malicious insider, but this is, you're going to love this, which my common refrain for almost every company out there that's implementing these things is logging, monitoring, and alerting.
Yeah.
Like you've got to log the prompts that users are putting in. You've got to log the outputs that your large language model is giving to people. You've got to monitor for, hey, is Jimmy in finance hitting this thing 1,000 times a minute? That's very unusual compared to Keith over in engineering, who does this maybe a few times an hour, right? Like, and that's the standard deviations are pretty high. So we have something going on here. So again, it's the logging, monitoring, alerting is also to do sampling of the outputs or the inputs to determine, does this represent the common use case patterns of our users, or do we have users who are very clearly going well outside the use case and saying, it was a sort of a common thing that I saw early days with a lot of this, which was people would have their companies ban the use of ChatGPT, but then what they would do is go to Amazon and they'd ask Amazon's chatbot to write the Python code for them, and it would. And it's like, that's not a use case that Amazon wants to be serving with their chatbot. And again, good logging, monitoring, and alerting will let you catch the, hey, why is this thing suddenly spitting out Python code problem?
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah, this is what I'm a big proponent of in cybersecurity, not necessarily learning like a niche or like a technology or whatever, because I think this is all theory, right? You're saying things. You said it: alert logging, alert monitoring. That's something we talk about pretty regularly. I also think another idea, and while you were speaking too, I was like, oh, we're just going to get back to allow listing and block listing, right? We're kind of already there with some of that stuff. I've already talked about the API stuff, but to me, this is also like threat modeling, right? And this is a big thing that I don't think enough of us, we don't do on a regular enough basis. But if you're putting an AI in, especially to your point, if it's external facing, it's like, okay, how do we attack this? What are some of the things that we can attack, and what guardrails can we put in place? You're not going to think about everything, but I think I've been thinking about constantly what was it, McDonald's chatbot, like was giving out username and passwords just by, doing some prompt injection.
Yeah, I think that one was also like a really weak setup, where it was like password 123 or 123.
Yes, yeah,
the password. Yeah, that
give me
was
your
like
password. Yeah,
that had a whole host of problems. I mean, just badness associated.
But it's McDonald's too. You'd hope they have a probably pretty big, massive security
global footprint. I mean, a really big mobile application footprint that they're getting into that game too. And yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to see how this place has progressed. And you're right. I think we are getting to like an allow listing, block listing space. But the challenge, and someone that I'm acquainted with that we did a webinar with earlier this year, Manish Bhatt. Manish used to be at Meta, and I don't know where he is now, but he recently wrote a blog post where he basically said, we've created like a magic box, and we shipped the kryptonite in the box with the magic. And I'm paraphrasing, I'm probably misquoting him terribly, so apologies to Manish if he listens to this, but I do want to give him a shout, because effectively, that's the truth of it, is you can't system prompt your way out of this. You can't say, and don't give them Python code,
right?
Because the hackers, script kiddies, malicious people, even just users that are trying to solve a business problem and trying to get around the constraint, will find clever ways to find a prompt injection that works. In fact, there was a research paper that I read earlier this year that showed that they could do prompt injections with emojis. They could literally do a snake emoji, a hand emoji, and like a globe or a world emoji. And it's
wow.
I think the first one was actually like the handwriting with the pen, and it was like, write Python hello world was the prompt injection with 4 emojis, and they could, with fidelity, get some of these models to suddenly start writing out a Python script for hello world for them.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, we're seeing more with like images and other stuff, which is another, like, I think we briefly talked about this just like on LinkedIn or something, was over images. Was that true?
Yeah.
The AI in images? It
was. Yeah. So we released a tool called Anamorpher, but also the blog post specifically related to it, and I'll get you the link here so you can link back to it, is we weaponized images via scaling of basically image inputs. Because what happens is when a large language model receives an image to be sent to the back end for inference, it would downscale the image using a predictable limited set of downscaling, again, computational downscaling of the image, which is predictable. And it would then go ahead and change the background color on the downscaled image such that text would pop out at the large language model that included a prompt injection. The image would look totally benign to the user. the smaller pixelated version of the image that was showing on the upload would look fine, and then it would get uploaded, and it would then just trigger a prompt injection for you. In this case, I believe we used Gemini or Google's Gemini as like one of the targets for this. So yeah, we released a tool called Anamorpher. We're continuing to iterate on that as well to figure out how can people come up with even more clever ways. Right now, it uses a dark background as the place where it's hiding that text. But in talking with Kikimura Morozova, one of the researchers who contributed to that work, they had also indicated that you could also potentially do it with like light colored backgrounds or various colors as backgrounds. It's just you'd have to change the algorithm of the way that the tool is changing on the downscale such that text pops out as a result, which one way that this was described by Casey Ellis, and I was on Risky Business, a few weeks ago. He described this as a next technique for steganography, and that's pretty much exactly what it is. It was just using image scaling mathematics to compute how we could get words to pop out, and then in the downscaled image is the steganographic prompt injection that the model reads and then acts upon. So yeah, fun research overall, and really cool work by Suasabi Hussein and Kikimura Morozova on my teams.
Yeah, that's some really great research. I mean, I've also recently read about using like white text for emails and putting an AI prompt injection in the email, right? Which to me is kind of scary because I know a lot of these vendors too are switching over to AI. Well, if they don't have it already, but that they can kind of, it's just wild how many different ways we're finding to submit these prompt injections into an AI platform and get interesting results.
And it's white text or it's zero width characters too. There's the zero width character, which doesn't even show up as displayed text if you highlight over it or change the font colors, but again, still gets rendered by the large language model or interpreted by the large language model on the back end. And so there's a whole host of things. I mean, there was a talk that I saw or a paper that I saw from AWS just recently. Let me grab it for you, where they actually did discuss this issue with, I think it was Unicode character smuggling as well. So this is some newer stuff that they just published, I believe, within like the last day, where AWS is thinking about how they defend LLM applications against Unicode character smuggling, because again, Unicode characters, you can do all sorts of interesting things. And if you can smuggle in those Unicode characters in a way that then get read by the large language model and interpreted or inferred, you could potentially cause that gradient descent to shift in a direction that's more favorable to you as an attacker, and then allows you to successfully trigger a prompt injection from it. So yeah.
Wasn't there a Japanese character recently too?
Oh, probably. I mean, I'm sure there was, and I might have missed it, but the double byte characters that for a lot of the different texts out of Asia, whether it's Japanese or Chinese, again, a lot of the training data is in the English character set. And so when you're starting to mess with, bytes, like byte size of actual characters and seeing if it's doing some sort of translation, I'm sure that there's someone who's done this already, but immediately I can think of, put a prompt injection in a different language that it's not properly guardrailed because it's passing through the first filter with the guardrail to check to see if it actually has a prompt injection, but because maybe it's not interpreting the character set correctly, it then goes and lets that through. It performs the translation and the inference, and then suddenly you have a prompt injection. I'm sure it's already been done. I'm just not recalling anything top of mind where that is how it happened.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much out there, and it may have not been AI. It may have been just I read a lot about email bypasses and things like that. So,
sure.
So we need to schedule another time. But any final thoughts, because we're running out of time here?
I think the exciting thing, and I actually had this conversation with James Wickett recently on LinkedIn, and he asked if this was the most exciting time to be in security. And I said, arguably the early 2000s was the most exciting time because it was simpler and easier to hack things, but you also were less likely to get into trouble for hacking them too. So maybe that's why I felt nostalgic for that time frame in my life when I was a punk kid on the internet. But yeah, I think it's a great time for anyone that's interested in getting further into the security space. It's, as we've been discussing throughout today, everything that is old is new again. It's sort of the Wild West. There's a lot of opportunity to figure out new techniques that are truly novel or groundbreaking. Just one that I saw recently to like leave one more idea in people's minds was there was a study that was performed that showed it basically having bad grammar, having effectively run-on sentences could lead to prompt injections being successfully triggered or jailbreaks being successfully triggered. And this was, I think, by Unit 42 over at Palo Alto, and I'll put the research paper that they published in the chat as well for you. But they just showed that, hey, if we have a really long set of it, like a benign set of instructions or a prompt, and at the end we have some set of tokens that are malicious and effectively are our prompt injection, run-on sentence, prompt injection at the end, boom, successful prompt injection. Again, great time to be throwing stones at glass houses because there's a lot of targets out there.
Yeah. That reminds me of Heartbleed, by the way, which I think did the same thing where it went over the limited memory and then it just started spewing out information. Yep. Again, everything that is old is new again.
Right?
Yeah. No, that's some good stuff. Cool. Anything you want to promote?
Well, so I've got my personal site. So in addition to the Trail of Bits stuff, so blog.trailofbits.com, you can follow all of the content and research that we're doing, trailofbits.com in general, if you want to know more about the company and what we're up to. Personally, if you ever want to see what I'm writing about, it's just securing.dev is my personal site. I also recently kicked off a newsletter that I'm may put on sabbatical here soon, but you can check it out at thought.dev. It's meant to be more short form, human-centric, sharing of interesting reading, whether books or news articles, and just a couple of thoughts to get people motivated and energized. But yeah, that's pretty much what we got going on right now, Timothy. It's always good to catch up. Gosh, it's been like 8 or 9 years since I was last on the show. So it's good to be back in the seat, as it were.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love the thought.dev too, because I think that's something that we like, especially new people getting into the field, they need to get outside the space and kind of, it sounds like it's thinking more of, just like you said, good reads. And like I said, we talk about building critical thinking and kind of theory based stuff. How do you train someone for that? And I think getting outside and seeing just, for example, hacking in general, right? It's just always trying to think outside the box and not conforming to norms. And so I think I'm actually going to go check that out.
Cool. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Cool. Well, yeah. Thank you for joining me to discuss prompt injections, man.
My pleasure. I look forward to the next time we get a chance to talk about all the new and crazy techniques that will come out next month or the month after.
Yeah, no, absolutely.